Good evening, sixth graders. Welcome to the next lesson in this chapter. This is lesson 40. We're covering pages 83 to 85, and we're talking about the parts of the cell and their functions or their jobs within the cell. As we learned in the previous lesson, that all organisms have to show 5 characteristics in order to be classified as living. The fifth one we learned is that all organisms have cells. And a cell is a tiny unit of living material that's surrounded or covered by a thin membrane, or what we call a thin skin. This first one, this is an animal cell. It is covered what we call a cell membrane. Now, plant cells, they also have a cell membrane, but it's on the inside of the cell wall, and we'll talk about this in this lesson. Now, this is an example of an animal cell, and it kind of looks like a potato, but it's a very simplistic drawing of an animal cell. The first thing we'll talk about is the cell membrane. Now, the cell membrane is the outside covering or the skin of the cell. And this is very important. Just like the skin on your body protects the inside of your body, this is what the cell membrane does for the cell. It lets food and oxygen inside the cell so your body can grow and get energy. But it also keeps out things that do not belong in the cell. It acts as a barrier. The next one is cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is a clear jelly-like substance. It fills the entire all the extra space inside the cell, and also protects those little organelles that we'll talk about in this lesson. It's mostly made of water, but it also has fats and proteins that the cell needs to grow and to have energy. The next thing that we're going to learn about is called the nucleus. The nucleus is highly important. It is the brains of the cell. It tells all of these parts what to do. All these little tiny squiggly lines and parts and dots, these are what we call organelles. And just like in your body, you have the heart, your lungs, you have your stomach, you have your small intestines. Those are all organs in your body. Well, these little parts inside the cell, they're called organelles or mini organs. The nucleus itself has its own covering or own skin. It has a membrane of its own to protect the inside of the nucleus. It's kind of like your brain is surrounded by a skull. It has to be very protected. The next part is it's inside the nucleus. It's called DNA. And the DNA is highly important. It gives it tells all the other parts of the cell what to do. And it also determines or decides what the organism will look like and how large it will grow, or how tall or how short it will be. That's all determined in your DNA. Now, groups of DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid, these bundles are called chromosomes, and these are located inside the nucleus. The next one is called the mitochondria. Now, the mitochondria is what we know as the engine of the cell. You think of the word engine, it's very similar to the word energy. So this engine makes energy. It changes food into energy. Without energy, we cannot do work. Without energy, the cell cannot do its jobs. The next one is called the endoplasmic reticulum. That's a very difficult word to say. You should say it out loud. Endoplasmic reticulum. And this is kind of like a transportation system of the cell. And kind of like when you come to school, you ride the bus or the subway. That's a form of transportation. It gets you from your home to the school, and then from the school back to your home. Well, what this endoplasmic reticulum does, it moves different materials that the cell needs throughout the cell. Now, inside, or I'm saying alongside the endoplasmic reticulum, you notice these little dots. They're called ribosomes. And ribosomes are very important. They make protein. And they also obey the DNA that is inside the nucleus. Protein is very important for your body. Protein is needed to make strong muscles. The next one is called vacuoles. Now, vacuoles, they're little tiny bubbles inside the cell. Now, both plant and animal cells have these vacuoles, but they're different in each cell, and we're going to see that in this lesson. In humans and animals, they're very small, and they're temporary. They don't last very long. And what they do is they store nutrients until the cell needs it. That puts extra nutrients inside these vacuoles. But it also, some of these vacuoles, they store material that needs to be taken out or released out of the cell. This is an example of a plant cell. It has some of the same things that an animal cell would have. For instance, the nucleus, ribosomes, cytoplasm, cell membrane, the mitochondrion. They're similar, but there are some differences with plant cells. The first one, the vacuole is much larger. There's one large central vacuole. There are some smaller vacuoles inside a plant cell, but mostly the vacuole is this one large vacuole in the middle of the plant cell. It takes about half of the cell's volume, and it's really important. It stores water and other nutrients inside this vacuole. And for instance, if there's not enough water, maybe there's a drought, the plant will pull water from this vacuole to feed the plant. And you'll notice that the vacuole is empty if the plant begins to droop or hang low or kind of wilt. This is an indication that that plant needs water. The next one is called the chloroplast. You'll notice that this is what gives a plant its green color, because inside the chloroplast is what is called chlorophyll. And chlorophyll is very important. It absorbs the sun energy. Without the sun's energy, the plant could not make photosynthesis. And photosynthesis is the way a plant makes food for energy. The last part is called the cell wall. Now, this is much different from an animal cell. An animal cell does not have a plant or a cell wall. For instance, in animals and in humans, we have our skeletons or our bones that help us to stand up straight. Well, there are no bones inside a plant, so the cells have this extra outside layer called a cell wall. It gives strength and supports the cell, but also you put all of these cells together, it gives very, very strong support to the whole plant. Like I said, it's very similar to the bones in humans and animals. It gives the plant strength. And the reason why is it's very, very strong, it's rigid, it's firm, to give the strength to that plant. Okay, let's go ahead and read pages 83 to 85. Be ready with some questions tomorrow, and I'll see you then.